I have two brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may.
Hi, welcome to Left Foot Media. My name is Brendan Malone and you're watching The Daily Question. Today's question of the day: what is everyone getting wrong about Baby It's Cold Outside? Now, the reason I'm asking that question is because you've probably seen the news that a couple of weeks back there were some radio stations in the US who decided to ban the song Baby It's Cold Outside. This is a song that gets played every Christmas, or it's a pretty big deal, particularly in the States. Ironically, it's not actually a Christmas song. We'll talk more about that in just a second, but it gets a lot of airtime. And it was around, I think, this time last year, or sort of through in the lead up to Christmas last year, that you had certain people beginning to suggest that this song was actually some sort of rape coercion song. That you've got a man singing to a woman, "Hey baby, it's cold outside, maybe you should stay." That effectively, like when I hear that song, I hear, "Baby, it's cold outside." Now, other people, though, when they were hearing that song, they were hearing, "I'm gonna rape you now." Now, I'm thinking to myself, what am I missing here? Now, here's the thing. I want to explain to you some important context, first of all, that a lot of people don't seem to actually know about this song. And then secondly, I want to explain something really important about the song itself that particularly those who complain about this song, completely miss about it. But before I do that, I was reading an article earlier today, and apparently at least one of the major radio stations which pulled this song from its playlist several weeks ago has now reinstated it. And it seems that basically a lot of their audience members said, "Hey, what are you doing? Who told you to do that?" And so they've all of a sudden gone back on this ideological utterance from high command that they received to stop playing the song. And now they're actually playing it again, which in itself is just an absurdity, because remember the reason why they revoked the song? The reason they stopped playing it was because they claimed that they were claiming that they were taking a principled position. They were taking a moral stance. We're not going to play this song because of what its moral implications are. But then as soon as a whole lot of audience members said, "Oh, well, we're not going to listen to you anymore if you don't play the song," they said, "Oh, no, forget our moral principles. We'll put the song back on air." So what it shows you is there was no moral principled stand in this at all. It was pure public pressure at its worst. But let's dive into the actual important stuff. So first of all, the context and the background to the song. This song is not a Christmas song, as I've previously mentioned. A lot of people think it is. It's not a Christmas song. It gets played around this time of year, primarily probably because of the whole "Baby, it's cold outside" lyric. But this song is actually from a 1949 film called Neptune's Daughter. Now, it actually won an Oscar, the song did, for Best Original Song, an Academy Award in 1950. It's a pretty darn good song, and Neptune's Daughter is a musical comedy. It's well worth a watch. If you've got nothing else to do these holidays, watch the film. It's actually quite an enjoyable, very much a product of its time, but quite an enjoyable little musical comedy. Now, here's the sort of plot, the basic plot outline to this film. You've got two sisters who are very successful sisters living in the Big Smoke. You've got Eve Barrett and Betty Barrett. And what happens is, it's basically the premise of the film is mistaken identity. You have these two men who are two different men who are mistaken for the same man. So you have a South American polo player, that's polo on the back of horses, you know, the stuff that rich people do. And his name is Jose O'Rourke. He's played by none other than Ricardo Montalban. That's right, the great Khan from Wrath of Khan himself. Very young, dashing figure that he cuts back in 1949. And the second man is a guy by the name of Jack Sprat, played by Red Skelton. Red Skelton is one of those physical comedy actors who very much is one of the forerunners to the likes of Jim Carrey, and he's got some great comedy moments in this film. But basically, Jose O'Rourke and Jack Sprat, effectively, they end up becoming the same person in this mistaken identity scenario. So what happens is Betty Barrett falls big time for Jack Sprat, but she thinks that Jack Sprat is Jose O'Rourke, and Jack Sprat plays up on this and pretends that he's this South American polo player in order to try and woo this woman. So she thinks that he's Jose O'Rourke. Meanwhile, Jose O'Rourke, the real Jose O'Rourke, actually falls for Eve Barrett, and he's trying to woo her. And so what happens is Eve Barrett thinks that her sister is dating and in fact at one point engaged to Hosea O'Rourke, and that the same fella is also trying to seduce her. And then, meantime, this whole big confusion ensues, and the whole plot, as you can imagine, culminates with this big moment of, what do you mean you're engaged to him? I'm dating this guy, I'm engaged to him. It becomes one of those kind of things, and it's really, really well done. There's also an interesting theme in this film, basically, of almost like it's an underlying theme. It's what you might call a subtext of, is this a bit of a split personality thing type going on? These two different sides of the same woman, possibly, two different personality types sort of playing themselves out in the world, and you see this often, the whole imagery of sisters side by side. But it's not part of the film. It's just an interesting little subtext there. As I said, it is an enjoyable musical comedy. Now, in the midst of this film, this is where we get the song "Baby It's Cold Outside," and we have Hosea O'Rourke singing this to Eve Barrett. But it's not just Hosea O'Rourke who's singing this to Eve Barrett, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. Before I get to the important part of the song that a lot of people have missed, here's a couple of points of irony about this film and about the context to this film. If you're someone who is highly offended by the song "Baby It's Cold Outside," you're going to probably be really, really offended if you actually watch this film, because you've got things in this film like the great Mel Blanc, the man of 1,000 voices, Bugs Bunny, who's actually acting. He has a part in this film where he plays a Mexican, complete with "Hey, si, senor," fake accent that he's doing. You're really going to hate that. At another point, Red Skelton puts on a blanket over his head and pretends that he's actually a Native American very briefly in one of the comedy scenes in this film. You're really going to hate that kind of stuff. Here's the other big irony here. Both of the female leads, and they are the leads in this film, they're the main characters, and there's what you might call a feminist sort of leaning to this film. Both of them are very strong, independent woman. Eve Barrett is actually the owner, the partner with a male in a very successful business. She's the main role. The two males in this are actually the co-stars when you consider the whole plot and context. And on top of that, Betty Barrett is actually aggressively pursuing Jack Spratt. Like, she's really full on. So she's probably one of the most aggressive characters in this. And I guess on top of all of that, you've got another character altogether, Joe, who is the business partner with Eve. Now, Joe, who's not involved at any point in singing any of these romantic songs and songs about seduction, this guy Joe is actually really genuinely creepy. He's abusive. He is manipulative. He's the guy who actually is the creepy character in all of this, not Hosea O'Rourke singing "Baby It's Cold Outside" trying to seduce this woman. Not at all. But this other guy Joe is actually, there's a couple of scenes with him and you're like, ooh, what a weird dude. Keep that guy away from any ladies. Here's the important bit, though, about the song, and this is the really important bit, and it seems to me that a lot of people I hear complaining about the song just don't actually understand the song itself and the original context, and also the original song and the way it actually plays out. Most people, when they think of this song, they're familiar with the first part of the song, and they don't realise that it's actually a song that's in two equal parts. It's kind of not a duet, a quadret. You've got two different duets that are part of the same song. And most people are familiar with the first duet, where you have the male singing to the female, "Baby, it's cold outside," and saying, "Hey, why don't you stay?" And so you've got the male trying to seduce the female. And a lot of people think that's what the whole song is. It's not. So they're familiar with this part here.
"I'll take your hat. Your hair looks swell.
I ought to say no, no, no,
Mind
sir.
if I move in closer?
At least I'm gonna say that I tried.
What's the sense of hurting my pride?
I really can't
Oh,
stay.
baby, don't hold out, baby.
Oh, but
it's cold outside.
But as I've said, this song is actually in two parts. In the second part of the song, the roles are completely reversed. And I've met very few people who actually know this, because in the second part of the song, and this is really important, you have now got Betty Barrett, who is very aggressively trying to seduce Jack Spratt, and she's singing to him, "Baby, it's cold outside." And this is the bit here that most people don't seem to realise is in the song.
I'll take your hat. your hair look
I ought to say no, no,
Mind if I
senor.
move in
At
close?
least I'm going to say that I
What's
tried.
the sense of hurting my
I
pride?
really can't
Oh,
stay.
baby, don't hold out,
Oh,
baby.
but it's cold outside. You simply must go.
Baby, it's cold outside.
But here's the really interesting and I think quite important bit that very few people seem to have noticed about this song, even if they know about the fact that it's in two different duets and they know the second part is a female singing to a male, Baby It's Cold Outside. So let's watch the ending now to the first part of the song where you have the male singing to the female.
How can you do this thing to me?
There's bound to be talk tomorrow.
Think of my lifelong
At
sorrow.
least there will be plenty implied.
If you got pneumonia and
I
I
really can't
get
stay.
over that old doubt, baby,
Ah, but it's cold
outside.
Right, that's pretty straightforward kind of stuff. So now let's watch the ending to the second part of the song, which is, if you like, the final act of the song. It's in two parts. This is how the whole song concludes, and this is the ending of the second part.
How can you do this thing to me?
There's bound to be talk tomorrow.
Think of your lifelong
At least there will
sorrow.
be plenty implied.
If I caught pneumonia and died,
really can't
get
stay.
over that old doubt,
Oh,
baby.
but it's cold outside.
Now, what do you notice about the two different conclusions to the two different parts of the song? That's right. The female is the more aggressive of the two people, the male and the female, who are singing this song to members of the opposite sex. In fact, the first part of the song ends with them both just sitting down on the couch, and that's it. There's no indication beyond that what's going on. The second part of the song ends a lot more aggressively and, shall we say, a lot more clearly indicating to us what is going on here. So you tell me, which one, the male or the female, is being more coercive, more aggressive towards the opposite sex in this song? Now that's a really, really important piece of context that very few people seem to actually understand about Baby It's Cold Outside. In the meantime though, I would say this, forget about the controversy, actually do yourself a favour, sit down these holidays and watch Neptune's Daughter if you get a chance. It's a funny film. It is very much a film of its era, but it is a funny film still. It holds up. It's still very watchable, and screenwriters take note. This is a great example of how to write a screenplay. A lot of modern screenwriters could actually learn from this. This film is about 90 minutes long, actually slightly less than that in total, and everything that's on screen is put at the service of the plot, and everything makes sense. The motivations, the reasons for things happening, it moves at a really good pace. It's well worth a watch. So do yourself a favour this holidays, over the Christmas break, sit down and watch this film. You can get it on iTunes, and not only will you probably have a pretty enjoyable experience of a classic film, but you'll also probably educate yourself a little bit more about the context behind Baby It's Cold Outside. As per usual, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please let me know what you think in the comments section below. And if you like the content I'm creating and you'd like to see more of it, then please consider financially supporting the channel. The links for how to do that are in the video description below. That's right, I can hear my theme music too. I'll see you tomorrow on The Daily Question.